Lena, an artist drowning in debt, faced public humiliation and vile threats from her predatory boss. A powerful Mafia boss, Dante Volkov, swept in, effortlessly dismantling her tormentor's empire. But when he declared, "She's mine," dragging her into his opulent, dangerous world, Lena realized salvation came with a terrifying price. The scent of turpentine and oil paint clung to Lena Petrova's fingertips, a stubborn, beautiful residue of the few stolen hours she'd spent in her tiny apartment, lost in the vibrant chaos of her canvas. It was the only place where she truly existed, where the crushing weight of reality momentarily lifted, replaced by the boundless expanse of her imagination. Her latest piece, a swirl of sapphire blues and emerald greens, depicted a mythical forest, a sanctuary far removed from the city's grim embrace. Yet, as the last vestiges of daylight bled from her window, Lena carefully capped her tubes of paint, the faint metallic tang of her brush cleaner a stark reminder that her sanctuary was fleeting. Soon, the harsh fluorescent glow of the obsidian would replace the soft, forgiving light of dusk. Her apartment, a cramped studio barely larger than a walk-in closet, hummed with the soft, rhythmic whir of the oxygen concentrator beside her brother's bed. Little Misha, only 7, lay fragile against the pillows, his small chest rising and falling with an effort that tore at Lena's soul. The quiet hiss of machine was the soundtrack to her despair, a constant, chilling reminder of the mounting medical bills that devoured her meager earnings. Lena stroked Misha's soft, dark hair, a silent promise forming on her lips. She would do anything. Absolutely anything. But anything felt increasingly desperate. Her art, her passion, offered no financial salvation. Instead, she bartered her spirit for tips and paltry wages, her nights spent in the shimmering, suffocating opulence of the obsidian. It wasn't just a club, it was a gilded cage. The air inside always seemed thick, heavy with the cloying sweetness of expensive cigars, the sharp bite of high-proof liquor, and an unspoken tension that hummed beneath the surface of polite laughter and clinking glasses. Tonight was no different. As Lena navigated the labyrinthine hallways of the obsidian, the plush velvet carpet muffled her steps, a stark contrast to the cacophony of her thoughts. The faint, smoky scent of aged whiskey lingered in her hair, a phantom of the dozens of glasses she'd poured already. The low thrum of hushed conversations and the distant clink of poker chips were a constant backdrop to her personal torment. Her crisp white shirt, part of the obsidian's uniform, felt like a shroud, smothering her artistic soul, erasing Lena Petrova, the painter, and leaving only Lena, the invisible bartender. "Petrova, get your lazy ass over here." Mr. Thorne's voice, a gravelly snarl that always seemed to scrape against Lena's nerves, cut through the din. Lena's shoulders tensed. Mr. Thorne, the club's proprietor, was a man built of cheap suits and cheaper intentions. His eyes, small and beady, constantly roved, dissecting, judging, always seeking a weakness to exploit. Tonight, a vein throbbed visibly on his temple, an early warning sign of his foul mood. He stood at the far end of the long mahogany bar, gesturing impatiently with a cigar that billowed thick, acrid smoke, burning Lena's nostrils. "Coming, Mr. Thorne," Lena replied, her voice the carefully modulated monotone, devoid of the weary resignation that weighed her down. She moved swiftly, gracefully, her movements practiced, fluid. Every evening was a delicate dance, a performance of subservience to avoid Thorne's volatile temper. He leaned in as she approached, his breath hot and stale with whiskey. "The high rollers are here tonight, girl. And they demand service." His gaze slid suggestively over her, a slimy, unwelcome touch. "Don't disappoint me. We wouldn't want any complications for your little family. Now would we?" The veiled threat, always simmering just beneath the surface of his words, sent a shiver of dread down Lena's spine. Complications. That was Thorne's favorite euphemism for the insidious private appointment he'd been subtly pushing on her for weeks. He'd fabricated a phantom debt, claiming she owed the club for minor breakages, for misplaced liquor, for every invented infraction. The debt was a leash tightening with each passing day, and the appointment with a payment he truly desired. Lena swallowed hard, her throat suddenly dry. "I understand, Mr. Thorne. I'll ensure everyone is satisfied." The word tasted like ash in her mouth. Her fingers, usually steady, trembled slightly as she polished a glass, a crystal cold against her skin. She hated the implied promise in her own words, the sickening realization that her spirit was being slowly chipped away, piece by agonizing piece. She was a bird in a cage, and the bars were closing in. Misha's face, pale and innocent, flashed in her mind, a powerful, desperate anchor. She couldn't let him down. She wouldn't. The night wore on, a relentless blur of requests, clinking ice and forced smiles. Each passing minute, the pressure mounted, the air growing heavier, filled with the unspoken desperation of those gambling fortunes and the silent anxiety of those serving them. Lena felt like a ghost, moving through a world that consumed everything around her, including her own fading hope. Then a new tension rippled through the club, a silent, almost predatory hum. It was the kind of shift that preceded a storm, quiet before the inevitable chaos. Lena glanced towards the VIP poker table, her gaze drawn by a figure she hadn't seen before, a man who radiated an almost terrifying calm. His presence was like a sudden drop in temperature, cold and absolute. She knew, with an instinct born of survival in this dark place, that something significant, something dangerous, was about to unfold. The air in the obsidian crackled, thick with the scent of high-grade cigar smoke and the metallic tang of unspoken avarice. Tonight, the stakes at the VIP poker table were astronomically high, even for this temple of illicit indulgence. Lena could feel the tension radiating from the ornate mahogany table, a palpable hum that vibrated through the polished floorboards and up into her weary bones. Her hands, usually so nimble and sure, twitched with a nervous energy she couldn't quell. Each clink of a poker chip sounded like a death knell in the oppressive silence that occasionally fell over the room. Then he entered. He moved with the effortless grace of a predator, his presence a dark, chilling shift in the club's already volatile atmosphere. All eyes, subtly, imperceptibly, swiveled towards him. He was Dante Volkov, a name whispered in hushed tones, synonymous with power, ruthlessness, and an empire built on shadows. Lena had heard the legends, the chilling tales of his cold, calculating mind and the brutal efficiency with which he dismantled his enemies. She had never seen him in person, only glimpses of his shadowed profile in distant corners, but tonight he walked with a purpose that felt impossibly vast. He was taller than she expected, a formidable sculpture of sharp angles and coiled strength. His perfectly tailored black suit, a whisper of Italian silk, seemed to absorb the ambient light, making him appear even darker, almost spectral. His hair, raven black and meticulously styled, framed a face that belonged on a Roman statue, chiseled, austere, completely devoid of warmth. But it was his eyes that truly captivated and terrified. They were dark, almost black, like obsidian polished to an unnerving sheen, capable of seeing everything while revealing nothing. A thin, almost invisible scar bisected his left eyebrow, adding a brutal edge to his otherwise immaculate features. The subtle, expensive cologne that wafted from him was an intoxicating blend of oud and cedar, a scent that spoke of old money, dangerous secrets, and an undeniable predatory allure. Dante Volkov took his seat at the head of the poker table, a position that seemed to inherently belong to him. He didn't acknowledge anyone, simply settled into the plush leather chair as if he were taking his throne. Mr. Thorne, perched nervously opposite, offered a forced, obsequious smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Even Mr. Thorne, in all his petty tyranny, quailed slightly under the silent, potent authority of Dante Volkov. Lena felt a prickle of goosebumps trace her arms. Her internal world, usually a storm of anxiety, quieted in the face of his overwhelming presence, replaced by a strange, unsettling fascination. This man was danger personified, a dark star around which all others orbited. "Whiskey neat, Petrova," Thorne barked, shattering the fragile silence. He gestured towards Dante. "And for our esteemed guest, Mr. Volkov, the usual." Lena nodded, her movements stiff. Her gaze drifted to Dante. His eyes, though fixed on the cards in his hand, seemed to sense her presence. She felt a phantom tug, a magnetic pull that was both terrifying and undeniably captivating. She quickly averted her gaze, her cheeks flushing, and busied herself with the task. The cool, smooth glass of the whiskey bottle felt strangely grounding in her trembling hands. As she mixed Thorne's drink, her eyes darted to him. He was sweating, despite the club's perfectly regulated temperature. His hand, thick and bejeweled, was trembling slightly as he flipped through a small leather-bound ledger he kept hidden beneath the table. In a fleeting moment, as he adjusted his grip, Lena caught a glimpse of the cramped, hurried handwriting. Numbers, impossibly large, dominated the page, followed by a name scrawled in an aggressive, jagged script that sent a cold shiver down her spine, the butcher. Below it, a scrawled notation, "Final warning, 3 days. The butcher." The name alone was enough to make the city's underbelly flinch. A loan shark, notorious not just for his exorbitant interest rates, but for the brutal, theatrical ways he collected his debts. He left his mark, quite literally, on anyone who dared to defy him. Thorn, a man who loved to project an image of untouchable power, was clearly in deep. The realization ignited a flicker of dangerous curiosity in Lena, quickly extinguished by a surge of renewed fear. This wasn't just about Thorn's petty tyranny. There were far darker currents at play here. She carefully placed Dante's whiskey before him. He didn't look up, but his fingers, long and elegant, brushed hers as he took the glass. A jolt, like static electricity, shot through her, a fleeting spark against the backdrop of her constant fear. His touch was cold, precise, utterly devoid of softness, yet it sent an unexpected tremor through her. Lena quickly retreated, her heart hammering against her ribs. The final hand of the poker game was played in a suffocating silence. The air thrummed with unspoken expectations. Thorn's face was a mask of desperate hope, his eyes darting from his cards to Dante's impassive face. Dante, however, remained a picture of serene, almost bored, confidence. His posture was relaxed, yet every fiber of his being exuded absolute control. Then the cards were revealed. Thorn slammed his hand down, a flush of aces. A sigh of relief escaped him, quickly turning into a guttural choke. Dante simply laid his cards on the table, one by one. A royal flush. Effortless. Devastating. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers, quickly stifled. Thorn's face went from pale to a mottled crimson. He had just lost an astronomical sum, a fortune that would undoubtedly deepen his already perilous debt to the butcher. His humiliation was complete, public, and absolute. Thorn rose from the table, his chair scraping violently against the floor. His eyes, wild and bloodshot, scanned the room, desperately searching for an outlet for his impotent rage. His gaze landed on Lena, standing silently behind the bar, polishing a glass. "You," he roared, his voice hoarse, shaking the hushed atmosphere of the club. "Petrova, you miserable, thieving little witch." Lena froze, the glass slipping from her trembling fingers and shattering with a small, sharp pop on the padded floor behind the bar. Her breath hitched in her throat. The sudden, unexpected accusation sliced through her, leaving her exposed and vulnerable. All eyes, now, were on her, a humiliating spotlight in the opulent darkness. "You think I didn't see you, huh?" Thorn continued, his voice rising, venomous. "Hovering, always hovering. You stole from me. You stole from my clients. A cheap little pickpocket, that's what you are. And I'll make sure everyone knows it." He stalked towards her, his face the grotesque mask of fury. Lena recoiled, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Shame washed over her, hot and stinging, burning her cheeks. She felt every judging stare, every silent whisper, every accusation pierce her fragile resolve. The injustice of it all, the sheer, brazen fabrication, left her speechless, paralyzed by fear and humiliation. "I'll teach you what happens to thieves in my club." Thorn spat, closing the distance between them. "I'll make sure you regret the day you ever set foot in the Obsidian. I'll break you, girl. I'll ruin you." He was practically spitting in her face now, his breath acrid with liquor and rage. Lena squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the inevitable strike, the public degradation that would surely follow. She was nothing, a pawn to be sacrificed, her dignity shredded for Thorn's wounded pride. She was invisible, a ghost, a thing to be broken. But then she felt it, a flicker of movement, a shadow falling over her. She opened her eyes reluctantly to find Dante Volkov's gaze fixed on her. Those obsidian eyes, dark and fathomless, held no pity, no judgment, yet an unsettling intensity that made her breath catch. He sat still, unmoving, his posture one of absolute, terrifying calm, observing her humiliation with an unreadable, predatory scrutiny. What did he see? A victim? A weakness? Or something else entirely? His gaze was a silent question, chilling promise. And Lena, caught between Thorn's furious threats and Dante's enigmatic power, knew, with a sudden devastating certainty, that her nightmare was far from over. It had only just begun. The shattered glass from the night before had been meticulously swept away, leaving no physical trace of Mr. Thorn's public outburst. But for Lena, the shards still glinted in her memory, sharp and unforgiving. Each whispered accusation, each contemptuous gaze from the club's patrons, had burrowed deep, festering in the quiet chambers of her mind. She walked through the obsidian as if she were made of smoke, her movements even more ethereal, trying to avoid Thorne's gaze. But his presence was a heavy, suffocating blanket. He called her into his dimly lit office the next evening, the smell of stale whiskey and desperation clinging to the air. Thorne sat behind his imposing desk, a predatory gleam in his beady eyes. "So, Petrova," he began, his voice dangerously low, "we need to discuss your future with the obsidian." Lena's heart pounded. She stood rigidly, her hands clasped tightly behind her back, digging her nails into her palms, a small private act of defiance. "I understand, Mr. Thorne. I am prepared to work harder to prove my loyalty." "Loyalty," he sneered, pushing himself back in his chair, the leather creaking ominously. "Your loyalty is irrelevant. Your value is what concerns me." He picked up a framed photo on his desk, a photo Lena had, with a sickening lurch, recognized instantly. It was a picture of Misha, taken at the local park, smiling brightly, oblivious. Her blood ran cold. "Your little brother, isn't he?" Thorne's voice was a silken trap. "Such a delicate boy. Always needing his medicine, his special doctors. Expensive, isn't it? Very, very expensive." He tapped the photo with a manicured fingernail. A shame if anything had happened to his care. A shame if he suddenly found himself without access to what he needs. A raw, primal fear surged through Lena, so potent it stole her breath. Misha. He was her everything, her fragile anchor in a tempestuous world. The thought of him suffering, of his life being tied to this monster's whims, was a torture more exquisite than any physical pain. "You leave him out of this," she hissed, her voice a tremor she couldn't control. Thorne chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Oh, but he's very much in this, Petrova. You see, I have certain arrangements I need fulfilled. Arrangements that will ensure your brother's continued comfort. All you have to do is be agreeable. Tonight, for instance, Mr. Valerius, our esteemed guest from Russia, is very interested in a private conversation." Lena's stomach churned. The private appointments, the vile, unspoken horror he demanded. Her entire body recoiled. "No," she whispered, the word barely audible. "I won't." Thorne's smile vanished, replaced by a chilling grimace. "You will, Petrova. Or you will watch your precious little brother waste away. Think of it as a small inconvenience to secure his future. Unless, of course, you'd prefer he simply disappear from the hospital roster." The veiled threat of Misha's disappearance hung in the air, cold and definitive. Lena felt a sickening sense of vertigo, her world tilting precariously. Her desperation clawed at her. She had to find a way out, any way out. That night, Lena frantically tried to reach out. She pulled out her old, cracked phone, her fingers fumbling over the worn keypad. Her one hope was Anya, a former law school classmate, now working at a reputable firm. Anya, with her bright eyes and unwavering sense of justice, had always seemed like a beacon. Lena typed out a hurried, desperate email, detailing Thorne's threats, the fabricated debt, the implied prostitution, Misha's illness. She followed up with several calls, each one echoing into Anya's voicemail. Days passed. Each shift at the obsidian was a fresh torment. Thorne's gaze was a constant, burning brand on her back. He spoke in riddles and menacing suggestions, each word a tightening noose around her throat. Anya's response finally arrived. Curt, dismissive email. "Lena, I understand you're going through a tough time, but these are serious accusations. Without concrete proof, it's just your word against a powerful man's. My firm can't get involved. Perhaps you should try to resolve this amicably." Amicably? The word mocked her, a cruel joke in her crumbling world. Lena stared at the screen, the glowing letters blurring through a fresh wash of tears. The small, cluttered sanctuary of her apartment, with its lingering scent of paint and the soft hiss of Misha's machine, suddenly felt like the loneliest place on earth. She was utterly, terrifyingly alone. Her last lifeline had snapped. As if fate itself delighted in twisting the knife, new faces began to appear in the obsidian. Burly, silent men with shoulders too wide for their expensive suits and eyes that held no warmth. They moved with a disturbing efficiency, their gazes sweeping over the club, lingering a moment too long on Thorne, then on Lena. The Butcher's enforcers. Their presence was a physical manifestation of the dark currents she'd glimpsed in Thorne's ledger, a chilling confirmation of the danger pressing in from all sides. Lena felt their eyes on her, heavy and calculating, as if assessing her value as a commodity, a piece of meat in a butcher's shop. One particularly suffocating evening, after the last of the regular patrons had trickled out, leaving only the skeletal crew and a few lingering high rollers, Thorne cornered Lena in a narrow, dimly lit service corridor leading to the back storage room. The air here was heavy with the smell of spilled liquor and dust, a far cry from the perfume of oud and cedar. The rough brick walls seemed to close in, trapping her. Going somewhere, Petrova? Thorne's voice was a low growl, laced with malicious intent. He blocked her path, his bulky frame casting a menacing shadow. Lena's heart slammed against her ribs. She tried to step around him, but he moved with surprising speed, slamming his hand against the wall beside her head, trapping her. The rough plaster scraped against her hair, dull pain. His breath, hot and putrid, fanned across her face. "I think it's time we finalize those arrangements," he hissed, his eyes glinting with a predatory hunger. His hand reached out, his thick fingers closing around her arm with brutal force, digging into her flesh. "Mr. Valerius is a very impatient man, and so am I. You have a choice, Lena. Cooperate, and your brother lives comfortably. Refuse, and you'll wish you'd never been born." His grip tightened, bruising. He pulled her closer, his face inches from hers. "You belong to me tonight, girl. I own you." Lena squeezed her eyes shut, a wave of nausea washing over her. The foul smell of his cologne, cheap and cloying, made her want to vomit. She struggled against his grip, but his strength was overwhelming. Tears pricked at her eyelids, hot and furious, but she refused to let them fall. She would not give him the satisfaction. This was it. Then, her body trembled, a raw, uncontrollable tremor of terror. She felt utterly helpless, a lamb led to slaughter. Suddenly, a voice deep and resonant cut through the suffocating silence, a voice that was pure ice. "Let her go." Thorne froze. His head snapped up, his grip on Lena's arm momentarily slackening. Lena's eyes flew open. Standing at the end of the corridor, cloaked in shadow, was Dante Volkov. He hadn't appeared from nowhere. He was simply there, an immovable, terrifying presence. His posture was deceptively relaxed, but his obsidian eyes, even from a distance, burned with an infernal, chilling intensity. He wore a dark, impeccably tailored overcoat, and the faint scent of oud and cedar, a stark contrast to Thorne's reek, seemed to fill the corridor, asserting his dominance. Thorne, for all his bluster, visibly paled. He stared at Dante, fear replacing the predatory lust in his eyes. He slowly, reluctantly, released Lena's arm. Lena stumbled backward, clutching her bruised arm, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The relief was immense, a sudden, dizzying drop from the precipice of terror. But it was quickly replaced by a new, unsettling apprehension. Dante Volkov, the obsidian predator. Why was he here? Why had he intervened? Dante stepped forward, his movements fluid, silent, covering the distance between them in an unnerving few strides. He stopped directly in front of Thorne, towering over him. His voice, when he spoke again, was a low growl that vibrated through the very air. "You touched what isn't yours, Thorne." "A fatal mistake," Thorne stammered, his face a mask of terror. "Mr. Volkov, I was merely disciplining my staff. She was stealing, I assure you." Dante didn't even dignify the lie with a response. His gaze, cold and absolute, swept past Thorne, landing on Lena. It was a possessive, assessing look that stripped her bare, yet surprisingly, held no malice. Then he turned back to Thorne, a chilling smile playing on his lips. "The obsidian is mine now, Thorne, and so is everything in it, including her." Lena's breath hitched. "His?" The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning, wrapping around her like an invisible, suffocating cloak. She watched stunned as Dante's men, previously unseen, materialized from the shadows of the corridor, moving with quiet, deadly efficiency. They grabbed Thorne, his protest choked into whimpers. Dante's eyes, dark as the deepest night, locked onto Lena's. The intensity was overwhelming, a silent declaration that left her breathless. He took a single step towards her, then another, until he was directly in front of her. The scent of him, clean and powerful, filled her senses. "Come," he commanded, his voice deep, quiet, leaving no room for argument. He extended a hand, not to console, but to command. "You're coming with me." Lena looked from his outstretched hand to the retreating figure of Thorn, being dragged away by Dante's men, his pathetic cries echoing down the corridor. She was no longer Thorn's prisoner, but Dante Volkov, the Mafia boss, had just claimed her. Her escape from one cage had led her directly into another, more gilded, more dangerous one. A shiver, both of fear and an unsettling, undeniable curiosity, ran down her spine. Her nightmare might be over, but a new, far more complex reality had just begun. The ride in Dante Volkov's obsidian black sedan was a blur of muted luxury, the city lights streaking past like desperate pleas. Lena sat rigid, her bruised arm clutched against her chest, the scent of expensive leather and Dante's overpowering cologne filling the confined space. She dared not speak, dared not even breathe too loudly. Dante sat beside her, silent, his gaze fixed on the endless stream of streetlights. The silence was heavier than any conversation, a suffocating blanket woven with unspoken threats and terrifying promises. When the car finally purred to a halt, Lena found herself staring up at a skyscraper that seemed to pierce the very heart of the night sky. Its facade was a shimmering expanse of darkened glass and polished steel, utterly devoid of warmth. This was Dante Volkov's domain. His guards, hulking shadows in dark suits, were already awaiting their arrival, their movements precise, their eyes unblinking. The penthouse itself was a monument to austere luxury. Marble floors, so cold they seemed to leach the warmth from the air, stretched endlessly. Stark, modern art adorned the walls, each piece a silent scream of abstract emotion. The views from the floor-to-ceiling windows were breathtaking, the city spread out beneath them like a glittering, indifferent tapestry, yet Lena felt no awe, only an immense, crushing isolation. This was not a home. It was a fortress, a gilded cage built of power and attachment. Sophia will see to your needs, Dante stated, his voice devoid of inflection as he led her through the sprawling living space. You will remain here. You will not leave without my permission. My staff will be available for anything you require. Consider it a protection. His eyes, dark as polished jet, flickered to hers for a brief, unsettling moment. Understand. Lena's throat felt constricted. Protection. The word tasted like ashes in her mouth. It sounded less like an offer and more like a command, a stark reminder that she had merely traded one captor for another. I understand, she whispered, her voice barely audible. The irony was a bitter pill. She was safe from Thorn, but utterly at the mercy of a far more formidable predator. Sophia, a kind-faced woman with eyes that held a lifetime of quiet observation, gently led Lena to a bedroom. It was larger than her entire apartment, adorned with silken sheets and plush rugs, a stark, almost painful contrast to her humble existence. Lena sank onto the edge of the king-size bed, the plush mattress swallowing her small frame. She felt utterly out of place, a wildflower plucked from its soil and replanted in a sterile, opulent vase. Her primary concern, a burning ember in her chest, was Misha. How could she ensure his safety, his treatment, from within these gilded walls? The thought of her brother, frail and alone in the hospital, sent a fresh wave of panic through her. The next morning, Lena cautiously approached Sophia, her voice trembling slightly. Misha, my brother. Is he all right? Sophia offered a gentle, reassuring smile. Mr. Volkov made arrangements. Your brother was moved to a private facility this morning, the best in the city. All expenses are taken care of. He's stable, comfortable, and has round-the-clock care. Lena's breath hitched. Relief, so overwhelming it brought tears to her eyes, flooded her. A wave of profound, unexpected gratitude washed over her, battling fiercely with the apprehension that still coiled in her gut. Dante had done this. The ruthless Mafia boss had quietly, efficiently, ensured Misha's well-being. It was an act of startling kindness from a man who seemed to embody pure, unyielding power. But at what cost? Her artist's soul whispered. What does he expect in return? Days bled into a strange, unsettling routine. Lena was a prisoner of luxury. The penthouse, despite its extravagant comforts, felt like an elaborate trap. She missed the familiar grittiness of her old neighborhood, the faint scent of charcoal and linseed oil that clung to her walls, the vibrant chaos of her half-finished canvases. Her hands, usually restless, felt empty, aching for the touch of a brush. Then, one afternoon, Sophia led her to a previously unnoticed room. Sunlight streamed through a large window, illuminating an easel, a pristine set of brushes, and an array of untouched canvases. Pigments in every conceivable shade lined a polished wooden table. Mr. Volkov thought you might appreciate a space for your talents, Sophia explained softly, her gaze warm. Lena stared, her heart thumping a frantic rhythm. An art studio. Her own. She ran her fingers over a smoothed and used canvas, the fine texture a balm to her restless soul. It was a gesture that spoke volumes, a silent acknowledgement of the woman beneath the bartender uniform. A tremor of growing curiosity about Dante Volkov stirred within her. Who was this man who offered both a cage and a canvas? New clothes appeared in her wardrobe, silks, cashmere, tailored trousers that fit her perfectly. The textures felt alien against her skin, a soft mockery of her former life. She was no longer Lena, the struggling artist, but a curated version, a beautiful possession. It amplified her unease, the feeling of being an object, yet it also offered a strange, undeniable comfort. She was safe, adorned, cared for. But was she truly free? Meals were the most tense of her daily interactions. Dante would join her in the expansive dining room, the heavy silence punctuated only by the soft clink of silverware against porcelain. He rarely spoke, his dark eyes often sweeping over her, an intense, almost burning gaze that made her skin tingle. Lena would try to eat, acutely aware of his presence, every swallow a conscious effort. She found herself subtly observing him in return, the precise way he cut his food, the controlled power in his hands, the faint, almost imperceptible tension in his jaw. He was a creature of formidable self-discipline. One evening, as Sophia served espresso, her hand accidentally brushed against Lena's. A fleeting contact, yet it sent a jolt through Lena, reminding her of the cold, electrifying spark when Dante's fingers had brushed hers at the obsidian. She looked up, her gaze meeting Dante's across the polished table. His eyes held hers for a beat too long, an unreadable depth swirling within their obsidian depths. It wasn't an aggressive look, not a threat, but something far more profound and unsettling, a searching, almost possessive intensity that mirrored the growing, reluctant stirrings within her own chest. Confusion swirled in Lena's mind. This man, who had plucked her from despair and surrounded her with opulence, was still the ruthless Mafia boss. Yet he ensured her brother's survival, offered her the solace of art, and watched her with a gaze that was far from indifferent. The initial suffocating fear slowly began to meld with a strange, nascent curiosity. There was undeniable power in his protection, a primal sense of safety she hadn't felt since her father died. But at what point did protection become possession? And did she, Lena Petrova, the artist, truly want to break free from this gilded cage, or was a part of her deep down beginning to find an unsettling comfort in its confines, drawn by the burning gaze of her dangerous protector? The sunlight filtering through the vast windows of Dante's penthouse studio was an artist's dream, illuminating dust motes dancing in the pristine air. Lena stood before a fresh canvas, a palette of vibrant oils clutched in her trembling hand. She had begun to paint again, tentatively at first, then with a desperate, burgeoning energy. The luxury of the studio, the silence, the sheer freedom to create, was a potent balm to her battered spirit. Misha was safe, his medical reports arriving daily, filled with reassuring updates. Yet, despite these gilded comforts, an undercurrent of unease still pulsed beneath Lena's skin. The memory of Thorne's grasping hand, of Dante's chilling claim, was a phantom touch, a constant whisper of the dangerous reality she now inhabited. Her current painting was an abstract piece, a swirling vortex of deep blues and menacing grays, with a single fragile streak of gold at its center. It was Dante. The darkness, the power, the impenetrable mystery, and that unexpected, almost terrifying thread of something precious he offered her. She studied the canvas, a strange mix of fear and an unsettling curiosity blooming within her. Who was he, truly? A monster, yes, but a monster who provided. A cage, but one lined with silk. A subtle shift in the penthouse's atmosphere interrupted her creative trance. It was almost imperceptible, a tightening in the air, a hushed urgency in Sophia's movements, the faint new glint of a guard's earpiece Lena hadn't noticed before. Her artist's intuition, honed by years of observing subtle changes, screamed a warning. Something was wrong. Later that afternoon, a discreet chime echoed from the main entrance. Sophia answered. Lena, drawn by an instinct she couldn't name, lingered just out of sight. A man, his face a grim mask, spoke to Sophia in low, rapid Italian. Lena didn't understand the words, but the tension radiating from Sophia was palpable, chilling. As the man left, Sophia's shoulders sagged. She carried a small, unsealed envelope, its contents appearing to be photographs and a cheap, plastic-wrapped trinket. Sophia caught Lena's eye, a look of profound regret and worry etched on her kind face. "Lena, dear," she began, her voice unusually strained. This came for you." She held out the envelope and the trinket. Lena's heart plummeted to her stomach. The trinket was a child's cheap plastic soldier, a familiar toy. Misha's. Her breath hitched. Inside the envelope were 3 blurry, grainy photographs. The first showed the entrance to Misha's new, private hospital wing. The second, a close-up of Misha's hospital room window. And the third, the most horrifying of all, was Misha himself, asleep in his bed, a clear, sinister red circle drawn around his tiny, innocent face. Scrawled across the back of the photo in crude block letters was a single, chilling message. "What's mine is mine, Volkov. Touch her again, and his blood is on your hands." Thorn. It could only be Thorn. A scream tore through Lena's mind, raw and agonizing, though no sound escaped her lips. Her vision blurred, the pristine white walls of the penthouse suddenly seeming to spin. Misha. They knew where Misha was. They had found him. The absolute safety Dante had promised, the gilded cage she had almost begun to trust, shattered around her like fragile glass. Thorn wasn't just a petty tyrant. He was a desperate, dangerous fool, willing to endanger an innocent child despite Dante, to reclaim his property, her. Guilt, cold and sharp, pierced her. This was her fault. Her existence, her connection to Dante, had made Misha a target. The suffocating fear returned with a vengeance, wrapping around her throat, choking her. She had to protect him. But how? She was a prisoner here, however luxurious her cage. What power did she have against men like Thorn, men like the Butcher, men like Dante? Dante. The name echoed in her mind. He was the only one. But what would he do? The ruthless power she had witnessed at the Obsidian, the casual cruelty he dispensed to Thorn, now terrified her not just for herself, but for Misha. Could she trust his protection to extend to her brother? Or would Misha become merely collateral damage in a war between dangerous men? She found Dante in his office, a vast, impeccably organized space dominated by a massive dark wood desk. He was on the phone, his back to her, his voice a low, commanding rumble of Italian. The scent of oud and cedar was stronger here, a powerful, almost oppressive presence. Lena approached the desk, the photographs clutched in her trembling hand. She laid them down before him, the plastic soldier clattering softly. Dante hung up slowly, deliberately, then turned in his chair. His obsidian eyes, usually so guarded, widened imperceptibly as they fell upon the images. He picked up the photos, his fingers, long and strong, brushing over Misha's circled face. His jaw, usually a chiseled line of granite, tightened, a muscle jumping beneath his skin. The silence stretched, taut and suffocating. Thorn, Lena finally managed, her voice a raw whisper, barely recognizable as her own. He found Misha. He knows. Her eyes, wide and terrified, pleaded with his. You said he would be safe. You promised. Dante's gaze, when it met hers, was a terrifying storm. There was no warmth, no pity, only a cold, absolute fury that made Lena involuntarily flinch. It wasn't directed at her, but it was so potent, so primal, that it made the air crackle. He made a mistake, Dante stated, his voice a low, guttural growl that vibrated through the room, a chilling counterpoint to her panic. A fatal mistake. He pressed a button on his desk intercom. Luca. My office. Now. Luca, a man Lena recognized as Dante's second-in-command, all sharp edges and coiled aggression, appeared within seconds. Dante didn't speak. He simply pushed the photographs across the desk. Luca's eyes scanned them, and his face hardened, a mirroring of Dante's icy rage. Thorn's last remaining assets, Dante commanded, his voice devoid of emotion, yet carrying the weight of absolute judgment. His safe house in the old industrial district. His private club, the Siren's Call. Every single thing he holds dear. I want them gone. Tonight. Completely. And I want him to know exactly why. Luca nodded, a grim smile playing on his lips. Consider it done, boss. And Thorn. Dante's eyes, fixed on the photographs of Misha, burned with a terrifying, vengeful light. Make him understand the consequences of touching what's mine. Every ounce of fear he tried to instill in her, multiply it by 1,000. Leave him with nothing but regret and the knowledge that every breath he takes is a gift from me. Let him live in the shadow of his own foolishness. Luca left as swiftly as he arrived, the door clicking shut behind him, leaving Lena alone with Dante and the aftermath of his chilling command. The ruthlessness was breathtaking, the sheer unbridled power he wielded, terrifying in its scope. He was dismantling a man's entire world with a few chilling words. Dante finally looked at Lena, his gaze softening, almost imperceptibly, from icy fury to a possessive, intense watchfulness. Misha is being moved again, he stated, his voice now lower, calmer, but no less absolute. To a location no one, not even Thorn, will ever find. I will personally ensure his security. He reached across the desk, his strong fingers taking the plastic soldier Lena had placed there, turning it over in his palm. No one touches what's mine, Lena. No one. Thorn just learned that lesson. The hard way. Lena stared at him, complex cocktail of emotions churning within her. The horror of his brutal command, the cold efficiency of his retribution, was undeniable. He was a monster, a true predator. Yet, in that moment, witnessing his absolute, uncompromising power, she also felt an immense, overwhelming wave of relief. Misha was truly safe, and an unsettling, intoxicating awe began to settle over her. She had seen the full, terrifying might of Dante Volkov, and it was devastatingly effective. She had glimpsed the true nature of the world she had stumbled into, a world where Dante was the ultimate, unchallengeable force. And for the first time, amidst the fear, she felt a strange, undeniable sense of peace. The monster was hers, and he was undeniably, fiercely protecting her. But what would be the cost of being his? The question, dark and alluring, lingered in the air, a silent promise of the intricate, dangerous dance that awaited them both. The aftermath of Dante's brutal, decisive command against Thorn left Lena in a peculiar state of disarray. Relief, potent and heady, surged through her for Misha's safety, knowing he was now beyond Thorn's reach. But it was tangled with a chilling horror at the sheer, unbridled power Dante wielded. He had dismantled a man's life with a few terse words, his retribution swift and absolute. She was safe, yes, but at what cost to her own soul? The pristine, luxurious confinement of the penthouse now felt heavier, more imposing. It was a golden cage, but the bars were still there, and the keeper was a creature of darkness she barely understood. That evening, unable to find solace in the opulent quiet of her room, Lena ventured towards Dante's office. Her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs, a drumbeat of apprehension. She needed answers. She needed to understand her place in this bewildering, dangerous new world. The scent of oud and cedar, Dante's signature, grew stronger as she approached, a subtle warning, an undeniable allure. The door to his office was slightly ajar, a sliver of warm light spilling into the cool hallway. He sat behind his enormous desk, bathed in the soft glow of a single lamp, a glass of amber liquid clutched in his hand. His perfectly tailored jacket was off, discarded over the back of his chair, and his white shirt was open at the collar, the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle. He looked less like a polished CEO and more like a warrior momentarily at rest, the scar above his eyebrow seeming more prominent in the dim light. He stared blankly at a complex financial report spread across his desk, but his focus felt distant, almost melancholic. Lena hesitated at the threshold, her hand trembling as she finally pushed the door open wider. The soft click of the latch made Dante's head snap up. His obsidian eyes, usually so guarded, met hers, and for a fleeting moment, she thought she saw something akin to surprise, perhaps even a flicker of weariness, before his customary mask of impassivity settled firmly back into place. Lena, he stated, his voice a low, even rumble, devoid of any warmth. Is there a problem? His question, so dismissive, so impersonal, ignited a spark of defiance within her. A problem, she echoed, stepping fully into the room, her voice trembling but gaining strength with each word. Mr. Volkov, my life has been turned upside down. My brother was threatened. A man's entire world was destroyed because of me. You claim to protect me, yet I feel like I've simply traded one prison for another. What am I to you? Possession? A trophy? I need to understand. Dante's gaze sharpened, piercing, and for a moment, Lena thought she had pushed too far. His jaw tightened, a muscle jumping. He took a slow, deliberate sip of his drink, the ice clinking softly in the silence, the only sound betraying any tension. "You are under my protection," he finally said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "That is all you need to know." "No," Lena countered, her voice now steady, fueled by a desperation that transcended fear. "That is not enough. You've given me a studio clothes, ensured Misha's care. I am grateful, truly. But what are the terms of this protection? Am I a bird in a gilded cage? Am I ever free to leave? To choose my own path? Or am I simply waiting for the next mistake to be made, for the next threat to emerge because I am yours?" The word yours felt like a brand, both terrifying and undeniably alluring. She walked towards his desk, her hands resting on the cool, polished wood, bracing herself. "My art is my soul, Mr. Volkov. Misha is my heart. I cannot live without them. I cannot live in fear, always waiting for the next shoe to drop. What kind of life is this?" Dante set his glass down, the soft thud echoing in the room. He leaned back, his obsidian eyes never leaving hers, scrutinizing her with an intensity that made her skin tingle. "You speak with passion, Lena Petrova. And foolishness. Foolishness to want freedom? To demand truth?" She challenged, a fierce, desperate light in her eyes. "I have been lied to, manipulated, and betrayed by men who claim to care for me. I will not stand for it again." Her voice cracked. Raw, vulnerable admission. "I chose to run from Thorn, knowing I might die. I chose to get in your car because I had no other choice. But I am not a pawn, Mr. Volkov. I am not." A subtle shift in Dante's expression. The impassive mask faltered, just for a moment. He rose from his chair, his movements fluid, powerful, walking past her to the vast windows overlooking the glittering city. His back was to her, his silhouette framed by the millions of distant lights. "No," he conceded, his voice softer now, almost a murmur laced with an unexpected gravelly edge. "You are not a pawn. Pawns break easily." He paused, gazing out at the endless urban expanse. "My world is not one of choices, Lena. It is one of survival, of power, and of protecting what is mine." He turned, his eyes searching hers with an intensity that stripped away her defenses. "I lost someone once," he began, his voice the low, resonant rumble that seemed to fill the vast office, carrying a weight of old pain. "A long time ago. Someone I swore to protect. She was innocent, too trusting. Like you, she had a spirit too bright for the shadows. And I failed her. My world consumed her. A rival, a betrayal from within my own ranks. They believed hurting her would break me, make me weak." His eyes, dark as the deepest night, were now clouded with a fleeting shadow of that past agony. "They were wrong. It did not break me. It made me harder, colder. It taught me that trust is a luxury I cannot afford. And that protection, true protection, requires absolute control. Absolute ruthlessness." He took a step towards her, his presence overwhelming. "I swore then that I would never make that mistake again. That anything I considered mine would be guarded with every resource, every brutal instinct I possess." Lena listened, mesmerized, a sudden aching empathy blooming in her chest. The monster wasn't born. He was forged in the fires of loss and betrayal. She saw the deep, unhealed wound beneath his impenetrable facade, the solitary burden he carried. He wasn't just a mafia boss. He was a man who had lost his heart and built an empire to ensure nothing else he cared for would ever be taken from him. "I understand betrayal," Lena whispered, her voice raw, remembering Thorn's lies, the way he exploited her trust. "I gave everything for Misha. My time, my dreams. I almost lost my soul. Thorn made me feel worthless, invisible. And when he turned Misha into a weapon, I was terrified, truly terrified." She swallowed, forcing herself to be utterly vulnerable. "My art is all I have left of who I was. It's my escape, my hope." She met his gaze, her own eyes filled with a fresh, fragile honesty. "You saved Misha. You gave me this studio. You gave me back a piece of myself. So, yes, I am in your cage, but I'm also safe. Safer than I've been in years." A profound understanding passed between them, unspoken yet palpable. Two souls, scarred by betrayal and loss, burdened by their own desperate needs to protect. He, an empire and a new, unexpected ward. She, a fragile brother and a burning artistic spirit. They were two halves of a dark, complicated equation, finding a strange, unsettling resonance in each other's presence. Dante took another step, closing the distance, until he stood directly before her. The air between them crackled, charged with an unspoken tension, an electrifying current that was both terrifying and undeniably magnetic. He reached out, his strong fingers gently tracing the bruised skin on her arm where Thorn had gripped her. His touch was feather-light, yet it sent a shiver through her, a warmth spreading through her veins, a stark contrast to the cold marble floors. His thumb brushed softly over her skin, a gesture of unexpected tenderness. Lena's breath hitched. She looked up, her gaze locked with his, and in his obsidian eyes she saw not just power, but a deep, burning intensity, a possessiveness that was no longer just about control, but something far more primal, far more intimate. "You are not worthless, Lena Petrova," Dante murmured, his voice a low, gravelly whisper that sent a tremor through her entire body. "And you are far from invisible." He leaned in slowly, his gaze dropping to her lips, a silent question. Lena's heart pounded, a frantic drumbeat against her ribs. Fear warred with a desperate, burgeoning curiosity, a nascent desire she hadn't dared to acknowledge. Her breath caught in her throat, her body frozen, yet her soul screamed a silent, undeniable yes. His lips, firm and possessive, finally met hers. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was desperate, demanding, a raw, emotional plea that spoke of old wounds and new, dangerous promises. It was the kiss of a man who had claimed her, not just physically, but as a balm to his scarred soul. Lena's fingers instinctively curled, clutching at the front of his shirt, pulling him closer, surrendering to the intoxicating darkness, the terrifying safety, the undeniable heat that consumed her. In that moment, the gilded cage felt less like a prison and more like a sanctuary. The memory of Dante's kiss still burned on Lena's lips, a lingering ember in the quiet of her luxurious bedroom. It had been raw, possessive, a desperate plea, and a fierce claim all at once. In that moment, nestled within the steel embrace of his office, the gilded cage had felt less like a prison and more like a sanctuary. He had revealed a sliver of his past, a deep, unhealed wound that resonated with her own. For the first time, Lena saw not just the impenetrable Mafia boss, but the man beneath, scarred by loss, driven by a primal need to protect. And in that vulnerability, a fragile, dangerous trust had begun to bloom within her. Days turned into a delicate dance of intimacy and apprehension. Dante's gaze, when it found her, held a new depth, a possessiveness that was both unnerving and oddly comforting. He spent more time in the penthouse, his presence a constant, formidable anchor. He would watch her paint, his silence heavy, yet devoid of judgment. He ensured Misha's absolute security, moving him to yet another, more discreet location, the details of which were kept from Lena for her own safety. Fewer variables, he had said, his voice flat, but his eyes conveyed a silent promise. Yet, despite this burgeoning connection, a low hum of unease persisted. Thorn's pathetic attempts at retaliation had been extinguished, but the shadow of the butcher still loomed. Lena knew Dante was a powerful man, but the butcher was a force of pure, unadulterated malice, operating in a realm of brutality that terrified her. The world of high-stakes poker, veiled threats, and illicit debts felt impossibly distant in the penthouse, yet it was the very foundation upon which her new, precarious existence rested. One blustery afternoon, as rain lashed against the skyscraper windows, casting the penthouse in a melancholic gray light, Lena received a call on the secure phone Dante had provided. It was from an unfamiliar number, untraceable. "Lena Petrova?" A woman's voice, hushed and strained, barely above a whisper. "This is Nurse Anya, from St. Jude's Children's Hospital. There's an urgent situation with your brother, Misha. He's had a severe reaction to a new medication. Respiratory distress. We need you here immediately." Lena's blood ran cold. The phone slipped, almost clattering to the marble floor. Misha. Her precious Misha. Respiratory distress. The words hammered at her, crushing her nascent peace, igniting a primal, consuming terror. What happened? Is he all right? He's critical, the voice insisted, a panic tremor in her tone. We've tried to reach Mr. Volkov, but his lines are unresponsive. You're his only emergency contact. You need to come to the back entrance of St. Jude's, main building, now. Don't tell anyone. This is highly sensitive, Anya. The name sparked a tiny, desperate flicker of hope. Her old law school friend. But the voice, it sounded different, frantic, almost desperate. Lena's mind raced. Dante had moved Misha, but the caller mentioned St. Jude's, Misha's original hospital. Was it possible he had been moved back due to the emergency? Dante's numbers being unresponsive was also unnerving, highly unusual given his meticulous security. Panic, raw and unthinking, seized her. Every instinct screamed to go to Misha. Her brother, her heart, was in danger. Dante was a formidable protector, but he was not Misha's mother. He couldn't understand this visceral, agonizing need to be by her brother's side. If she waited for Dante, for his meticulous plans and layers of security, it might be too late. A mistake, she realized later, born of an agonizing mix of maternal instinct, a lingering habit of self-reliance, and a desperate need to prove she wasn't entirely helpless. She had to go. Alone. Lena scribbled a hurried note, her hand shaking so violently the pen almost slipped. Misha needs me. Going to St. Jude's. She left it on Dante's nightstand, a futile attempt at explanation. She grabbed a simple dark coat, trying to blend in, to appear insignificant. The familiar scent of oud and cedar from Dante's pillow, still warm, was a fleeting comfort that quickly vanished as she rushed out. The penthouse guards, usually omnipresent, were nowhere in sight. A chilling thought, but her mind was too consumed by Misha to process it fully. She remembered Dante's instructions about the emergency exit, a service elevator to the ground floor. She took it, the descent agonizingly slow, heart pounding a frantic drum against her ribs. Each floor was a moment closer to Misha, a moment further from Dante's suffocating, yet now desperately missed protection. Stepping out onto the rain-slicked pavement, the biting wind immediately whipped around her, chilling her to the bone. The grand facade of St. Jude's loomed ahead, its familiar brick walls offering a deceptive sense of security. She ran, her cheap flats slapping against the wet asphalt, the rain plastering her hair to her face. The back entrance was deserted, shrouded in shadows, a lone flickering street lamp casting eerie, elongated figures. Hello. Lena called out, her voice thin, trembling. Nurse Anya. I'm here. It's Lena. Silence. Only the relentless drumming of the rain and the distant wail of sirens. A knot of unease tightened in her stomach. This felt wrong. Too quiet. Too isolated. Suddenly, a shadow detached itself from the deeper darkness beside a large, unmarked van parked near the entrance. Then another. And another. 3 hulking figures, moving with chilling purpose. Lena's blood ran cold. Not nurses. Not hospital staff. Well, a gravelly voice slurred, emerging from the shadows. It wasn't the woman's voice from the phone. This was a man, his face scarred, a cruel smile twisting his lips. He was the biggest of the 3, his frame a brute force of muscle. Look what the cat dragged in. The little bird left her golden cage. The butcher. The realization hit Lena like a physical blow. Her entire body froze, paralyzed by a terror so profound it stole her breath. The voice on the phone, the urgent plea, the unresponsive lines, all a meticulously crafted trap. Her mistake. Her desperate, fatal mistake. Misha, she whispered, the name a broken sob. The butcher chuckled, harsh, grating sound. The boy's fine. For now. But you, little bird, you're coming with us. Mr. Volkov made a mess of my business, and now he's going to pay. With what he values most. His eyes, cold and merciless, swept over her, a possessive, predatory gleam. He likes to collect, doesn't he? Fine. We collect too. Before Lena could even scream, a rough hand clamped over her mouth, suffocating her cries. Another hand grabbed her arm, twisting it painfully behind her back. She struggled, kicking and thrashing, but their combined strength was overwhelming. The foul smell of cheap cigarettes and stale liquor filled her nostrils as they dragged her towards the waiting van. Her heart pounded, a frantic, desperate rhythm against her ribs. She glimpsed the interior, dark, cavernous, terrifying void. Panic, pure and unadulterated, consumed her. Her brother. Donna. She had left him a note, but would he understand? Would he forgive her foolishness? The cold rain, usually a cleansing force, now felt like tears against her face. She was trapped, falling into a darkness far deeper than the obsidian, far more terrifying than Thorne's petty threats. She had willingly walked into the hunter's trap, and now the true predator had claimed her. Meanwhile, in the penthouse, Dante Volkov felt it. A prickle of unease, a tightening in his gut that transcended logical thought. Lena. Something was wrong. His instincts, honed by decades in a world where survival hinged on anticipating danger, screamed a silent warning. He tried to reach her on the secure phone. No answer. He checked the internal security feed. Her studio, her room, empty. The note, fluttering delicately on his nightstand, caught his eye. Misha needs me. Going to St. Jude's. Rage, cold and absolute, surged through Dante, so potent it made his vision swim. Foolish, impetuous girl. She had left his protection. She had walked into a trap. His promise. His sacred, brutal promise to protect what was his. He had allowed himself to be distracted, to be lulled by the fragile peace Lena had brought into his sterile world. He had shown her a glimpse of his own vulnerability, and in doing so had let his guard down. Self-reproach, sharp and agonizing, tore at him. Isabella. The ghost of his past, the woman he had failed to protect, screamed in his memory. He would not fail again. Not Lena. Not Misha. He barked orders into his comms, his voice a low, dangerous growl. Luka. Locate Misha Petrova's current secure location. Confirm he is safe. No. And get every available man. Lena is gone. St. Jude Hospital. South entrance. Now. Dante strode to the window, gazing out at the relentless rain, his face a mask of furious determination. His hands clenched into fists, knuckles white, the sheer force of his anger vibrating through his entire body. The butcher. This was his doing. He felt it in his bones. He would find her. And when he did, the butcher would learn the true, devastating meaning of Dante Volkov's wrath. He would tear the city apart, brick by bloody brick if he had to. He would leave a trail of fire and death that would make all previous retribution seem like a child's game. Lena was his. And no one took what was Dante Volkov's. The rain had intensified, a furious drumming against the penthouse windows, mirroring the tempest raging within Dante Volkov. Lena's hurried note, clutched in his white-knuckled fist, felt like a burning ember, scorching his carefully constructed control. Misha needs me. Going to St. Jude's. Foolish. Impulsive. Mine. The word echoed in his mind, laced with a possessive fury, so raw it tasted like ash on his tongue. He had sworn, after Isabella, that he would never again allow himself such a vulnerability, such a terrifying fear of loss. Yet here he was, staring into the abyss of that exact terror, multiplied by the fragile, vibrant life of Lena Petrova. Luka. Status report. Dante's voice, a low, guttural growl, sliced through the tense silence of his office. He slammed his fist on the desk, the heavy mahogany groaning under the impact. Where is she? What have you found? Luka, his face grim, stood before the desk, a tablet clutched in his hand. Misha Petrova is secure, boss. Moved as per your last orders. The butcher's trap at St. Jude's was a ruse. He never reached the boy. But Lena, she fell for it. He hesitated, sensing the lethal edge of Dante's wrath. We've located her. The butcher has her. An old meatpacking plant on the south side, abandoned for years. His personal slaughterhouse. The mention of the meatpacking plant, a notorious den of unspeakable horrors, sent a fresh wave of icy dread through Dante. His breath hitched, a fraction of a second of raw, unadulterated fear. He closed his eyes, picturing Lena, fragile and terrified, in that monstrous place. A red haze descended, blurring the edges of his vision. The cold, calculated control he usually wielded shattered, replaced by an animalistic, consuming rage. Mobilize every available man, Dante commanded, his voice shaking with suppressed violence. Arm them. No. I want that place torn apart, brick by bloody brick. No survivors. Leave nothing but a monument to his stupidity. His eyes, when they opened, were twin pools of obsidian fire. And I'm going myself. Luka started to protest. Boss, it's too dangerous. Let us. She is mine, Luka. Dante cut him off, his voice lethal, leaving no room for argument. He took what's mine. He will pay. Personally, within minutes, the penthouse, usually a bastion of quiet luxury, transformed into a command center. Guards, sleek and efficient, armed themselves. Radios crackled with rapid-fire commands. The scent of gunpowder, steel, and adrenaline filled the air. Dante, clad in a tactical black suit, strapped a custom-made Glock to his hip, its weight a familiar comfort. His obsidian eyes, usually so impassive, burned with an infernal light, reflecting the cold, deadly resolve that now consumed him. The convoy of armored black SUVs roared through the rain-slicked city streets, a formidable procession of vengeance. Inside, Dante sat rigid, his gaze fixed on the grim, approaching horizon. Every second was an eternity. Every beat of his heart was a silent prayer, a desperate promise that he would not be too late. The phantom touch of Lena's lips on his, the fleeting vulnerability in her eyes, fueled his desperate urgency. He had let his guard down. He had given her an inch of freedom, and a monster had snatched her away. The guilt was a corrosive acid, burning through his gut. Lena's world had shrunk to a suffocating box of stale air and the metallic tang of fear. The abandoned meatpacking plant was a nightmare made real. The air was thick with the stench of decay, old blood, and damp concrete. Chilling drafts snaked through broken windows, making her shiver uncontrollably. She was bound, gagged, her wrists chafed raw by coarse ropes, tied to a rusted support beam in a vast, cavernous room. Her eyes, wide with terror, scanned the decaying machinery, the hooks that once held carcasses, now casting grotesque shadows in the dim, flickering light of a single, bare bulb. The butcher, a hulking figure of menace, paced before her, his cruel laughter echoing off the grimy walls. He thinks he can just waltz in and take what he wants, he snarled, a thick, meaty hand slamming against the rusty beam beside her head. Lena flinched, a silent gasp escaping her gag mouth. He thinks he can steal my investment, my debts? But Volkov is about to learn. He's about to learn that when you mess with a butcher, you lose what's most precious. He ran a thick finger down her cheek, his touch slimy and repulsive. And you, little bird, are very, very precious now. Lena closed her eyes, hot tears stinging beneath her eyelids. She fought against the ropes, but it was futile. Despair, cold and absolute, threatened to consume her. She had been so foolish, so utterly, devastatingly naive. Misha, Donna. She had risked everything for nothing. She was bait, a pawn in a brutal game between ruthless men. The images of Misha's innocent face, Dante's burning gaze, flashed before her, a tormenting symphony of regret. Suddenly, a distant boom reverberated through the decaying structure, rattling the loose panes of glass in the broken windows. The butcher's pacing stopped. His eyes narrowed. A low, rumbling vibration followed, growing steadily louder, accompanied by the faint, unmistakable sound of automatic gunfire. "He's here," the butcher muttered, a cruel smile spreading across his face. Volkov, right on time. Looks like he does care. He turned to his men, who were already scrambling, weapons drawn. "Get ready, boys. We're going to give the great Dante Volkov a show." Lena's heart leaped, a desperate surge of terror and a fragile, burgeoning hope. Donna. He had come. The knowledge, even amidst her terror, was a powerful, unexpected bomb. But could he, even the formidable Mafia boss, survive this? The front entrance of the meatpacking plant exploded inward, splintering wood and twisted metal raining down. Dante moved like a force of nature, a dark, avenging angel, leading the charge. His men, a disciplined phalanx of lethal efficiency, fanned out, their suppressed weapons spitting fire. The air instantly filled with the concussive roar of gunfire, the sharp cries of men, and the acrid smell of burnt powder. Dante's eyes, fixed and unwavering, scanned the chaotic interior. He ignored the hail of bullets, moving with a singular, deadly purpose. Each step was a testament to his obsessive drive, his absolute need to reclaim what was his. His Glock barked, a precise, brutal instrument of death. He was a machine, fueled by rage and a terrifying, possessive love that transcended all reason. He saw her, tied to the beam, her eyes wide with terror, a gag distorting her beautiful face. Lena. His Lena. A growl ripped from his throat, primal and savage. The butcher stood before her, a crude pistol pressed to her temple, his face the triumphant sneer. Volkov. Stop right there. The butcher roared, his voice barely audible over the relentless gunfire. One step closer, and the pretty little bird gets her brains blown out. Dante froze. His weapon, aimed with lethal precision, lowered fractionally. The image of Isabella, dead because of his moment of hesitation, flashed in his mind, searing hot. No. Not again. Not Lena. Release her, Dante commanded, his voice the low, dangerous rumble that cut through the chaos, somehow heard by everyone in the room. This is between you and me, Butcher. Let her go, and I'll make your death quick. Oh, she's very much a part of it now. The Butcher laughed, a deranged, triumphant sound. He pressed the pistol harder against Lena's temple. Lena whimpered, a desperate, muffled sound. Her eyes, wide and pleading, met Dante's, conveying a silent terror that ripped through his very soul. See, Volkov? She's mine now. My collateral. And I want to make you watch as I take everything from her. Starting with her life. The Butcher's finger tightened on the trigger. Lena's mind, a whirlwind of primal fear, suddenly cleared. She saw the raw agony, the flicker of desperate helplessness in Dante's eyes, a look she never thought she'd witness. He couldn't move. He was trapped. But she wasn't entirely helpless. Not anymore. She remembered Dante's words, "You are stronger than you think." With a sudden desperate surge of adrenaline, Lena launched herself forward, not away, but directly into the Butcher's large, unsuspecting body. It was a reckless, suicidal move, but it bought her a fraction of a second. The Butcher staggered, his grip on the pistol momentarily loosening as he struggled to regain his balance, surprised by her desperate lunge. That fraction of a second was all Dante Volkov needed. He moved with the speed of a striking viper. His Glock roared, a single deafening shot that seemed to split the very air. The bullet ripped through the Butcher's hand, tearing the pistol from his grasp. The Butcher screamed, a guttural roar of pain and surprise, clutching his mangled hand. Dante didn't hesitate. He launched himself forward, a dark blur of fury. His fist connected with the Butcher's jaw with a sickening crunch, sending the massive man stumbling backward. Dante followed, a relentless, punishing storm. He unleashed a barrage of savage blows, elbows, knees, fists, each one delivered with the full, unbridled force of his obsessive rage. He kicked the Butcher's legs, bringing him crashing to his knees, then delivered a brutal uppercut that sent him sprawling onto the grimy, concrete floor. The Butcher, bleeding and dazed, tried to push himself up, snarling. Dante kicked him again hard in the ribs, a bone-deep impact that elicited another guttural scream. He grabbed the Butcher by his blood-soaked collar, hauling him up, his eyes burning into the man's terrified gaze. "You touched her," Dante growled, his voice a chilling whisper that promised absolute annihilation. "You threaten what's mine. No one does that and lives." With a final savage roar, Dante slammed the Butcher's head against the rusted metal beam Lena had been tied to. Once, twice, a sickening, pulverizing thud. The Butcher went limp, his body slumping to the floor, a broken, lifeless heap. Dante stood over him, breathing heavily, his chest heaving, his face splattered with blood, his entire frame vibrating with residual fury. The remaining men of the Butcher's crew, witnessing the brutal, personal execution of their leader, threw down their weapons, their faces pale with terror. Luca and Dante's men moved in, securing the area, their faces grim, a silent acknowledgement of the terrifying spectacle they had just witnessed. Dante turned, his gaze sweeping over the chaotic room, then fixing, unerringly, on Lena. He strode towards her, his movements still radiating raw power, but now infused with a desperate, singular focus. He knelt before her, his strong fingers fumbling with the ropes, tearing them away with a fierce urgency. He pulled the gag from her mouth. Lena gasped, sucking in great gulps of air, her throat raw, tears streaming down her face, tears of terror, of relief, of overwhelming. The sight of him, covered in blood, his eyes still burning, yet focused entirely on her, was both terrifying and the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. He pulled her into his arms, a possessive, almost crushing embrace that stole her breath. His large hands cupped her face, his thumbs gently wiping away her tears. "Lena," he murmured, his voice thick with a relief that was almost as profound as his earlier rage. "Are you hurt? Tell me." She shook her head, unable to speak, simply clinging to him, burying her face against his blood-stained shirt, inhaling the scent of oud, cedar, and gunpowder, the intoxicating, dangerous scent of her protector. His arms tightened around her, a fierce, unbreakable bond. He held her as if she were the most precious, fragile thing in his world, a treasure he had almost lost, and now finally reclaimed. "You are mine," Dante whispered, his lips brushing her hair, the words a guttural, possessive promise that vibrated through her very soul. "Always. No one takes what's mine." And in that moment, amidst the death and chaos of the slaughterhouse, Lena, bruised and terrified, felt utterly, completely safe. The roaring adrenaline from the slaughterhouse faded, replaced by a profound, bone-deep exhaustion that threatened to swallow Lena whole. Dante carried her from the grim, blood-stained concrete, through the driving rain, and into the waiting black SUV. She huddled against his chest, her body trembling uncontrollably, the raw terror finally giving way to overwhelming numbness. The scent of gunpowder and dried blood clung to him, a chilling reminder of the brutal scene they had just left. Yet in his arms, she felt an inexplicable, absolute safety. The ride back to the penthouse was a blur. She registered the quiet efficiency of Luca, the hushed voices of Dante's men, but her mind felt detached, floating somewhere above her body. All she could focus on was the steady, powerful beat of Dante's heart beneath her ear, a rhythmic anchor in the chaos. Back in the pristine luxury of the penthouse, the contrast was almost unbearable. Sophia, her face etched with worry, met them at the door. Dante, his own face still grim, but his eyes softened as they met hers, carried Lena directly to her bedroom. He laid her gently on the silk sheets, his large hands surprisingly tender as he unwound the soiled coat from her trembling form. Sophia, Dante's voice was a low command. Get her warm water, a gentle antiseptic, and something to calm her. And ensure she eats. He looked at Lena, his obsidian eyes searching hers with an intensity that transcended words. I'm here. You're safe. Lena could only nod, tears silently streaming down her face, a raw, desperate relief finally breaking through the numbness. The warmth of the plush comforter, the delicate scent of lavender from the room diffuser, slowly began to seep into her frozen core. Sophia, with practiced efficiency, tended to her scraped wrists and the minor bruises she hadn't even registered. The cool, damp cloth against her forehead, the bitter taste of herbal tea, were small mercies. Dante remained by her side. He didn't speak, simply sat on the edge of the bed, his presence a formidable, unwavering anchor. He held her hand, his thumbs stroking her knuckles, a silent promise of protection. She watched him through half-closed eyes, tracing the sharp lines of his jaw, the subtle tremor in his hand, the way his gaze never truly left her. He was still the predator, but in this quiet intimacy, she saw the raw, almost desperate tenderness he reserved only for her. This was his care, stark and possessive, but undeniably profound. As the hours bled into night, Lena drifted in and out of a fitful sleep. Each time she awoke, Dante was there, a dark, unwavering silhouette against the city lights. He made sure she drank the tea, that she picked at the light broth Sophia brought. His presence was a balm, a testament to his absolute commitment. The next morning, the physical aches were still present, but the emotional scars felt heavier. Lena found Dante in his office, speaking to Luca in low, rapid Italian. The air was charged with a chilling finality. Luca held a tablet, displaying images that made Lena's stomach clench, aerial shots of burning buildings, black smoke billowing into the gray dawn. Thorne's remaining assets, his safe house, his club, the siren's call, all reduced to ash. The butcher's network has been dismantled, Luca reported, his voice devoid of pity. His lieutenants are either in deep ground or have pledged allegiance. The message was clear. No one challenges Volkov and lives to tell the tale. Dante nodded slowly, his face impassive, but his eyes held a cold, dark satisfaction. And Thorne. He's alive, boss, Luca confirmed, a grim smile on his lips. Just barely. We left him with nothing. His reputation, his money, his mind, all gone. He's a hollow shell, begging for mercy he won't receive from anyone. A constant reminder of what happens when you touch what's yours. Lena listened, a profound chill running down her spine. The utter ruthlessness, the complete annihilation. It was terrifying, barbaric. Yet, as she met Dante's gaze across the room, she saw the unwavering resolve, the deep-seated conviction that this brutal justice was necessary. It wasn't about cruelty for cruelty's sake. It was about absolute, unequivocal protection. For her. For Misha. A strange, dark satisfaction settled in her heart. Thorne, who had made her feel worthless, who had threatened Misha, who had sought to consume her soul, he had received as just deserts. The butcher who had dared to use Misha as bait, who had intended to break her, he was gone. And Dante, the monster who protected her, had delivered that justice with his own blood-stained hands. Later, as the city began to awaken, painting the sky with pale hues of orange and pink, Dante found Lena in the art studio. She sat on a stool, staring at her canvas, the painting of swirling blues and grays, with its single, fragile streak of gold. She was tracing the golden line with a trembling finger. Dante stepped in, his presence filling the sunlit room. The scent of oud and cedar enveloped her, a powerful, possessive embrace. He stood behind her, his large hands resting lightly on her shoulders, his thumbs gently massaging the tense muscles of her neck. "Are you well, Moil Lyubov?" he murmured, his voice a low, gravelly caress. "My love." The Russian endearment, whispered softly, was both a revelation and a claim. Lena leaned back against his solid chest, finding an unexpected comfort in his strength. "I'm healing," she whispered, her voice still a little hoarse. "Your world, it's so brutal, Dante. So absolute." "My world is dangerous, Lena," he agreed, his voice a low rumble against her ear. "And I am a dangerous man. But I made you a promise. That no one would ever harm you again. That no one would touch what's mine." His hands tightened on her shoulders, a possessive squeeze. "The butcher is gone. Thorn is broken. Their shadows will never fall upon you or Misha again." She turned in his arms, her eyes meeting his. She saw the unwavering truth in their obsidian depths. He was her protector, her monster, and his love, though born of darkness and possession, was fierce, unyielding, and absolute. He had gone to hell and back to reclaim her, to avenge the threat to her and Misha. He had shown her a brutal, chilling justice, but it was his justice wielded for her. "I know," she said, her voice soft, laden with a profound understanding. "I know it was all for me." She reached up, her fingers tracing the scar above his eyebrow, a testament to the battles he had fought, the losses he had endured. "You lost someone once. You swore you wouldn't fail again." His gaze deepened, raw and vulnerable. "Never again, Lena. You are not just my promise. You are my light. And no one, nothing, will ever take that from me." Lena's heart swelled, a mixture of profound relief, absolute trust, and complete, unequivocal surrender. She understood now. This wasn't a gilded cage. It was an empire built for her protection, ruled by a man whose love was as fierce and possessive as his power. He was her darkness, her light, her safe haven in a world that sought to destroy her. And she, the artist, once trapped by debt and fear, was now fully, irrevocably, utterly his. "I believe you," she whispered, leaning into his touch, her lips finding his. "I trust you, Dante. Completely." His kiss was a reclamation, a desperate hunger infused with triumphant relief. It tasted of devotion, of power, of a love forged in fire and shadow. It was the kiss of a man who had pulled her from the abyss and now claimed her for eternity. And in that moment, Lena, surrounded by his strength, knew she had found her true place. Her dark protector, her absolute master, and her salvation. Sometimes the greatest cages are built not of steel, but of debt, fear, and shattered self-worth. Lena's journey reminds us that even when the world tries to label us invisible or worthless, our true strength lies within, waiting to be ignited. Her story isn't just about a mafia boss's formidable protection. It's about the profound courage to reclaim your voice, the unexpected beauty found in vulnerability, and the fierce, unwavering love that can bloom in the deepest shadows. Dante, a man forged in loss, found his own redemption in fiercely cherishing her spirit. If you've ever felt trapped, remember, your past traumas don't define your future, and resilience lights the way forward. If this tale of strength and passion resonated with your heart, join our community. Like, subscribe, and comment "My love is fierce" below. Together, we find hope in every story.